Hey, Lead Up listeners, welcome to the Lead Up podcast, sponsored by Harbour Resources. I'm Mike Harbour. Our goal is to change thinking and behavior around leadership so we can transform the way healthcare is delivered in America. Today, I'm excited. Our guest is Marcy Doderer. Marcy has radically transformed Arkansas Children's Hospital from a single centralized hospital in Little Rock into a massive statewide pediatric health system encompassing both multiple hospitals, research institutes, regional clinics, clinically integrated networks spanning every county in Arkansas. She's also the current chair of the Children's Hospital Association, representing over 220 children's hospitals nationwide. Marcy is a living case study of our behavioral performance equation. When she became the CEO at Arkansas Children's, Arkansas was ranked near the bottom of national health metrics when it came to children's health care. She recognized that changing outcomes in infant mortality and health rankings for kids required altering the thinking of her entire board and staff, shifting their identity from a medical center to a statewide health vanguard. We're going to learn about that today from Marcy, how she gradually then suddenly transformed Arkansas Children's into a model for others to follow in America. Marcy, welcome to the Lead Up podcast. So good to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me to join you. And that introduction makes me a little nervous about what you expect out of me today.
Yeah, you're well known, well respected around the state, I know, and certainly probably around the country as well. It's going to be an exciting conversation for me because my mission is to really just deliver excellence in leadership and personal growth for leaders in the healthcare space. You're certainly one that has done that in your space. But I want to start with your why, Marcy, why you chose healthcare. You were going to college. From my research, you were thinking about going into banking, but you took a course in healthcare as business, and then evidently that changed your mind. So what was the core belief about yourself that you had to change to jump from the more predictable world of finance into the chaotic world of healthcare leadership?
I think it's a great question. And I have been told that it's probably unusual I made a decision so young in my life, but I really was back in college studying finance at Trinity University in San Antonio. Had my eyes set on a master's program in international business. And I really thought I was going to Europe and be in investment banking in the international space and was thrilled by that until I was a junior in college. And I found myself scared by the finance classes. And I hope I'm not insulting any finance professors out there. I certainly didn't thrill my advisor when I made a shift in my own thinking, but I had an opportunity to take an elective called Healthcare as a Business, taught by the Healthcare Administration Department at Trinity University. And I was fascinated by how complex of a business it is, how dynamic it was, that I could really use my finance skills. But at the end of the day, there was a core mission to that work that resonated more with me than banking did. I sit on a bank board now and find banking to still be a fascinating industry, heavily regulated, a lot of similarities and parallels to the healthcare world. And they certainly banks serve a huge need in our country and in our economy. And they have a mission to also serve their customer. Healthcare for me spoke differently though. And I had the opportunity to spend some time at Arkansas Children's actually as a summer intern and get a feel for walking the halls of a children's hospital and seeing the business side of a children's hospital. And I was 20 years old actually, and was fundamentally changed in my thinking of what I wanted to do with my life. And I went back to school, told my advisor I was going to pursue healthcare. He was so disappointed, but he
Mhm.
was a buttoned up finance guy, pursued a master's in healthcare administration, and the rest is, as they say, somewhat history. But healthcare is the most extraordinary industry in our country, I think. And it is unnoted as such by many people in the business field about how complex we are as a business and how complex we are as a system with really vulnerable, fragile patients in our fingers that we are responsible for. And it's that confluence of business complexity and medical complexity that makes it an extraordinary place to lead.
Yeah, so good. I fell into healthcare when I was 20 years old. I didn't really pursue healthcare initially. I was going to school at Henderson State, where, it was in Arkadelphia. I was playing baseball and I quit playing baseball and I had to get a job to kind of help start paying some bills, is what my dad said. I got a job at a place called Birch Tree Communities. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're a mental health clinic in Saline County. And I went to work there as a healthcare orderly. And that was really my first kind of job in healthcare. And I've been in healthcare ever since, over 35 years now. So it really kind of chose me, but I found a love. It's so purpose driven. So let's talk about that for just a minute, because I think over the last 35 years, what I've experienced is, before you and I, many healthcare providers chose healthcare because of the purpose, the mission. And then it seemed like there was a shift too, especially maybe the clinical world, nurses and others started choosing it because it was a stable industry. That's no longer true. It's not as stable as it once was, right? But I think it also shifted kind of the mindset and psyche of those that work in the industry. So we've struggled with the people initially. It was easy to get them fired up for the mission and purpose. It's not as easy today as a leader. Where have you seen that shift? We're going to dig into this a little bit because I know you have had some of these leadership challenges, but where have you seen that shift and why people choose healthcare and the purpose of it versus the stable paycheck, the stable hours, those kind of things, and how that impacts our care of people that we serve?
I still believe actually that the vast majority of people who choose to work in the hospital industry in particular, that segment of healthcare, are still called to be there. Certainly, if we look at our 5,900 employees, we will have a segment of our employees who see it only as a job. They punch a clock, they come in, they go home, they give what they can during the course of their shift, and then they're out of there. We have that's a small segment of my employee
Mm,
base. We have a
yeah.
large segment of our employee base who are very professional. They give their all, they give 110% every time they walk the halls in whatever role they're in. And they are purposely here to be part of a healthcare environment, to be a pharmacist or a respiratory therapist, a nurse, a physician, whatever it might be. And they lead with incredible and they professionalism, and they bring that to their work every day. We are most successful, though, I believe, when we have a meaningful component of our workforce who feel called to come to healthcare, who go beyond the requirements of a job description, who not only give their all when they're here at work, but they think about their work outside of work as well. That they are, I won't say consumed because I would not ask that of anyone, but they really encompass all of their thinking and their being into going, whatever profession they happen to be, whichever clinical discipline. And I see that every day walking the halls of Arkansas Children's, whether it's in the hospital here in Little Rock, at ACNW, the clinic in Jonesboro, wherever it might be. Folks who really are motivated intrinsically by our mission that
Mhm.
is so aligned with their personal values that they can't help but be called to do what they do. I believe I was called to be a healthcare leader, and I think that's why that course in college spoke to me so greatly. It triggered something deep in my soul that said, "That's a better place for you than running a bank." I think I could have been an amazing financier. I'm not stupid. I could learn anything probably, and I learn a lot, but this was a place that called me to be. And so what's really been interesting to watch in the last, oh, 8 years is leading into COVID and that time in our nation's history, healthcare people were really the most respected professions in our country. Nurses and doctors often top the list of polls that say who's the most respected, the most trusted professional you would know.
Mhm.
And as we hit COVID, healthcare became heroes. You might recall those days that probably every hospital in this country guided by the EMS and fire trucks during COVID, and we had signs delivered to hospitals that said "Healthcare Heroes." In the last 4 years, that heroism has eroded in our country for some reason. I can't tell you why, but it is a national conversation in the healthcare space that healthcare professionals are no longer the top trusted people. People are jaded about their view of hospitals and healthcare in general. And as leaders in this space, we really feel an obligation to lift our teams up internally to help them recognize the heroism they bring to their job every day. And we just actually did that yesterday. It was a great celebration with our team, our leadership team. But we've got to reignite that spark that says, if you choose to work in healthcare, it is an extraordinary profession for you, but it is a really great place for you to spend your career. And you will do good in this world when you join the work of healthcare. But there's been an erosion of that since COVID that no one can quite explain.
Yeah. So let's talk about that just a minute. This reigniting the spark, because it is critical, right? I think that's one of our number one responsibilities as a leader is just to motivate our people, keep them attached to the purpose, and inspire them to do great work. How do you do that, or how are you doing that? How is your team doing that to reignite that spark? Keep your I think at Children's, obviously, I think that healthcare itself is just purpose driven. At Children's, it's probably 10x that, right? Just because of the patient that we are taking care of there. But still, the psyche of America is broken right now. So, what is your leadership team doing to kind of reignite that spark and redirect your team toward purpose versus what the world is saying, the world is doing, and the chaos of the world today?
Think there's a couple of ways we try to approach it. We remind our teams, and we do this upon recruitment, in new hire orientation, and then in moments through the course of our work, that we are mission driven and that we have a vision towards something bigger and better than we are as individuals and even maybe collectively as Arkansas children, and that our behaviors will be guided by core values that drive our work. And so we personalize that for each individual who joins our team. And then we're very intentional to tell the personal stories that happen at the bedside. If you think about the bedside nurse or the pharmacist or respiratory therapist, radiology technologist, they're the tip of the spear of healthcare, right? They're sitting in the exam room, they're sitting at the patient's bedside, they're on the phone with providers or parents. And if we can keep that touch point as personal as possible, encouraging our team members to remember you're working with people. You are a person and you're working with people. There's a person at the end of this work stream that you're engaging with. It's a deeply personal piece of work, and we can tell those stories.
Mm,
That helps in a resounding way send out the message that you are a hero saving the life of a child. We
mm,
can do that with great imagery, whether it's video or still photography, but we do it a lot with storytelling, with rounding, and reminding people and celebrating those small, intimate moments that really change the trajectory of engagement between a family and a patient and a healthcare worker. And we're not perfect at it, Mike, by any means,
yeah.
but it is a very intentional piece of our work to remind people of what I'll give you a short story. We're working on being able to deliver gene therapy to sickle cell patients at Arkansas Children's. It's a relatively new science in recent years. There are not very many hospitals yet who can deliver this gene therapy and actually fundamentally cure a person with sickle cell, relieve a lifetime of pain and hospitalization. And we are really close to doing that for the first time in Arkansas.
Mm,
And it will happen before the end of this calendar year. Uh,
oh,
but it's 2.5 years of work to get us to that point. 2.5 years of building capacity and capability of our team, building legal contracts, ensuring compliance, having billing, having the right physical space, all of these things. And we tell that story though with our teams. That work may feel like a slog. You're just stacking rocks, stone after stone, or chipping away at it. And it actually is all going to culminate in an incredible moment for a single patient this summer. And then more
wow.
patients will follow. But we're trying to inspire our people that kind of work, even if at the end of the day, we only change the trajectory of one child, just think what we've done. If
Yeah.
you could
So
cure
good.
sickle cell in one kid, there's almost 300 people in Arkansas with sickle cell disease. If we
Yeah.
could
That's
save them, wow.
that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that story. I didn't know that was going on there. That's incredible. The work that is going on there. I know, Marcy, how important you are as a leader and your vision and how you communicate. But at the end of the day, your leadership is only as strong as the leaders underneath you. And you've noted in the past that we've got to have a team of A player leaders around us But maybe if we have the wrong leaders, they hire people that maybe aren't as strong as we need on the team. So describe your mindset around A player leaders, B player leaders, and how that impacts culture, how that impacts the mission, and what the hidden cost is when we make the wrong hire to our mission if we don't have the right people on the team.
It's a really important part of the leader's responsibility to ensure those below them are on their team are also stellar leaders. I spend a lot of time thinking about the right leader in the right place at the right time and know that can actually shift. And it is true. I believe in my core, A quality leaders will hire A quality staff, and a B or a C leader is never going to do that because one, they may not recognize A leaders or A qualities and skills, but no one wants to hire people, or very few people hire people below them that are better than them. I mean, it's just
Right.
a natural human experience, right? So
Sure.
B leader is going to hire B and C employees. And we've got to break that cycle if it exists in the organization. There's several things I think that we've done really well over the last decade at Arkansas Children's. We've committed incredible resources to leadership development at all levels, supervisory level, manager, director, and then executives. In our executive ranks, we provide executive coaches to all of our executives over a course of time, giving them a gift of that coaching from somewhere between 6 to 12 to 18 months, depending on the person and the relationship. And we really see executive coaching as a gift. It's not a remedial piece of work, but we've got very precise and intentional training programs for leaders at all levels, advancing their skill set in kind of rudimentary management level things. Do you know how to have crucial conversations? Can you actually build goals? Can you do evaluations? Those building blocks to great management teams. But we also spend a lot of time on cultivating leaders. How are they looking for talent? How do they engage their teams differently? We've been very purposeful at building inclusive leadership. How do you teach a leader who's leading a team of 20, 30, 40 people to bring every voice to the table so you really get a diverse view set? To find the quiet member of the team and make sure they feel comfortable sharing their point of view. Mix and match those conversations so you get a really strong, robust concept that gets built into something better. At the end of the day, right now, what I'm trying to figure out is how we best recruit for or train for potential. Because what scares me more than anything is the jobs of tomorrow don't exist today. So the old habit of looking at someone's resume and relying on past experience as the best
Mm.
indicator of future success is harder because the work they're going to do tomorrow doesn't exist today. How do you tease out that past work? What drove their success? What was the competency, so to speak, or the behavior, not necessarily the technical skill? And how do you search for potential? How do you find someone with incredible curiosity, a sense of discovery, who's going to be willing to learn something new because the job doesn't exist today? I am fascinated by that concept. I actually get really excited when I have to personally go recruit for someone on my own team to try to tease out, does that person have the capacity and the will to do something completely different 5 years from now? Because we don't actually our crystal ball hasn't told us what the jobs will be. Not sure if that
Yeah.
answered your questions well enough, but can go deeper.
No, it's good. I love that topic you just brought up because it is something we have to begin to think about what the future looks like. Who's going to take care of us, right? We're gonna need healthcare at some point in our future. What that looks like. I'm a big fan of Carol Dweck's book Mindset and just the whole idea of growth versus fixed mindset, right? I think we have to get into that place where we're looking for people that are growth minded, that are willing to maybe make some mistakes, not in the OR, obviously, willing to make some mistakes from a leadership standpoint or growth standpoint. And can they learn and grow from that versus just say, I'm not good enough, or it freezes them, they get stuck. So just some thoughts on that from my perspective. But yeah, you answered the question well. I want to dig a little bit deeper though, because you've had to remove people before, I'm sure, in your leadership role. Never fun, right? Lots of leaders are not good at that. Let's talk about the personal cost when you've invested, because you've invested in people, you've invested in a leader, you've tried to help them be successful. There's but they create organizational drama. They create maybe productivity issues on the team. What's the cost personally to you as a leader when you have to remove? In some of my research, I think you had to remove a leader and maybe the entire team under that leader and kind of rebuild from the bottom. So, what's the personal cost in making that decision, and how do you work your way through that and build trust of others around you while doing that?
There have been a few instances in my career where I can think of 2 where I actually had hired a person that I then at the end needed it it wasn't gonna work, and one where I inherited, it's probably not the
Mhm.
best word, but
Mm.
inherited a team, and the cost of the organization when you have that turnover is huge. Financially, it's big, right? When you have to either provide interim leadership that's at a higher cost, just recruiting is costly, the time to get someone up to speed costs money. The non-financial wear and tear in the organization is also big because even when it might be the best thing for an organization, there are tentacles that come out from people. There are relationships that have been built that are harmed when someone isn't fitting in with the culture and they have to leave. There are also those tentacles and relationships of people who were totally loyal to the person who left. And so you erode trust on both of those sides, right? You've got to regain the trust of the people who thought the leader was the right person for them and they were loyal to that person. And now they're wondering, why did I decide that person wasn't the right person for our team? And then the folks who were harmed by that insidious behavior or that behavior that just wasn't aligned with mission and culture, that you have to help welcome them back and to bring them back into the fold and help them remind them that they are a valued part of the team. It takes intense time and one-on-one conversation. And so the personal toll is also strong. When in the 2 cases I was thinking of in my head where I had actually hired the leader and then it wasn't a successful fit, I have to experience my own feeling of failure. And what did I miss on that front end? What was I missing in those interim years that it took me too long maybe to see it? What is helpful is to remember, and I tell my teams this all the time, we are people and we are fallible and we're gonna make mistakes. And I too have made those as a senior leader and as a CEO. I've made mistakes like that. And it's hard to choose the right people at the right time to be on your team, to do what you want and need them to do. This goes back to that recruitment, that talent acquisition part. And there's not a, I don't think there's yet a great assessment tool. There's no AI out there yet that's going to tell us, I'm hiring for the next CFO, which is the most recent position I recruited into because our CFO retired. There wasn't some outside tool that could go scan the world of CFO tell me this one's going to be the best for you. And so I have a new CFO. He's been here just over 6 months. I guess actually 7 months this month. Seems to be a perfect fit. He's tremendous on the team. My fingers are crossed that we found the right person for us.
That's good.
It's hard.
Yeah, it is. I want to push on you just a little bit more here. The one person you hired that ended up, not being the right fit for you. How long before you realized that? And then how long after you realized that did you take to make a change?
Um, it was probably longer than necessary, but still within reason. A few years in, it
Mm.
became, I noticed a series of phrases that were used both from that leader towards me and of others discussing the leader that became warning bells for me that something wasn't quite right. And it started the conversation with the individual that I'm not sure this is the best fit for you. And work had some very specific point from feedback from others. And when a leader is receiving that kind of feedback and their automatic reaction is defensive, it's a confirming thing for me. When I've been able to deliver feedback to someone and they take a deep breath and their hands go to their lap and they say, I got to think about that. That's a sign to me the person's actually hearing the feedback. When the person remains poised, rigid, maybe even smiling like I'm trying to do right now to the camera,
Okay.
that actually is an indication to me that they don't believe what I'm telling them.
Yeah.
And Mike, I got on the two I was thinking about, I actually got, maybe lucky is not the right word, but as I started the coaching and the conversation, in both those instances, the person found a new job before I terminated them. And I think that's actually
Good.
the best case because it's ugly if you have to actually fire someone. And
Yeah.
I don't ever want to have to do that at a senior leader level. But it becomes
Yeah.
clear, I think, even if they don't accept the feedback in a way that I was hoping they would, so that we could kind of coach up and move on and forward, they're not bad people. They just weren't the right fit in my team at my time. And these people have gone on to do great things in their own careers. And it actually is easier when they can find their way out on their own, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, no, that's so good. I love that. My motto is coach up or coach out, right? And usually the coaching up could lead to them coaching themselves out, finding because they know that they're not going to be able to achieve the expectations we have set for them as leaders. And I love, there's a couple things, lead up listeners, I want to make sure you pick up on. Marcy didn't blame the person. She looked introspectively first. Where did I miss some things? Where did I miss things in the interview process? Where did I maybe ignore some things during the years that maybe because I didn't want to admit maybe that those things were there. All of those things are real in leadership. I think our first responsibility as leaders to look introspectively first. And is it me? And the other thing Marcy said that is so critical, there are no bad people. They're just bad fits, right? For maybe our mission, maybe our directions changed a little bit. And so what made them a fit 5 years ago, maybe no longer makes them a fit today. So I think that's very important. I want to shift personal for a minute. I have a 25-year-old, almost 26-year-old son. He had a major surgery at Arkansas Children's when he was 7 months old. I have a sister who's now deceased, but she had blood cancer as a kid, and Children's extended her life for a long time while she was a kid. So really believe in the mission of Children's Hospital, Children's Healthcare. This was many years ago, but you've also experienced healthcare as a parent and sat at the bedside with your daughter. So when you step back to the executive side of the desk, what did you realize healthcare executives completely misunderstood about patient trust and the healthcare system as a whole? And what did that change in your thinking and maybe direction for the team that you lead?
Yeah, I've had more time on what I call the parent side of the bed than I would wish on anyone. My daughter, my younger daughter, was born with significant medical complexity, a rare disease of there's about 1,200 people in the world with what she lives with every day. She's 28 years old and thriving in Chicago as a middle school orchestra teacher. So
You know, so
she is managing her own health care for the most part independently as a 28-year-old, which is there were days I didn't know that we'd see that day, and so it's really remarkable to watch as a mom. There it is I'll go back to a phrase I used a little bit ago when I was talking about the healthcare heroism that we need to continue to celebrate in our country, and that those personal connections one-on-one of the nurses and all the therapists and staff who are at the bedside with the parent and the family. When they can keep that personal and remember that the people on the side of the bed, the patient in the bed and the parent on the other side are actually humans, we thrive together as a care team. It is when the healthcare industry separates I think, particularly in pediatric healthcare, separates the parent from the care team that we miss the boat repeatedly. And it's on little things and big things. What I try to help our teams remember, and our teams do a remarkable job doing this, the parent knows the child better than anyone. And
mm,
all of the clinical equipment and the clinical signals will tell you one story about that child. But the nuances of that is unique to the child. And
yeah,
if we will make sure we engage the caregiver, mom, dad, grandparent, whoever they might be, in the conversations about what's happening to their child, we will do better by that child. We have a process at Arkansas Children's it's called Candor, and that's used more as an acronym, but it's the word candor, and it's communication and optimal resolution. It's a process we use to ensure if things don't go the way we want. And healthcare is not a perfect science, right?
That's
There
right.
are misses at times. If we use candor and we engage the family really early in the event and talk about what didn't go as planned, what our focus is for now, and where we're hoping to shift in the future, we find we can get to a better outcome, a safer place for that child when the family's involved right along. Because the parent has been able to tell us, I actually noticed these indications of my child deteriorating or being different than normal. And had we actually asked that maybe a day or two before, it's possible we could have avoided the miss, right? So the family brings intense knowledge to that table, even when they're not clinicians, even if they aren't professionals, even if they aren't speaking our language and we use an interpreter. There are things we should listen to from the parents to change the course of care for a kid. I also think walking in the shoes of the mom certainly has shifted my own approach to policy, to practices, to room design, to thinking about what's available for families and what's not, visitation policies, all sorts of with safety and security for families. And it's still not perfect here the way I would have this utopia of pediatric
Mhm.
health care. I think we've come a long way because of that same experience. And try to spend some time, I probably don't spend enough actually rounding on families myself and talking to parents and asking them how we're doing and being part of that conversation because I think I can hear differently what a grandfather might be saying versus someone who's never been on the parent side of the bed and understood that. It's an important voice to have at our table. So we have family advisory boards at Arkansas Children's where we invite parents in very formal settings. We have a youth advisory board where we engage with our teenage patients to help us construct process and policy and event. And then in our formal board committee for quality and safety, we actually have 3 parents who are members of the board committee for quality and safety, which is the ultimate place where quality and safety is overseen for Arkansas children. So we have a
Mhm.
parent voice at the highest level of governance to ensure we keep a parent voice deep in our midst as we discuss clinical care, quality, and safety at Arkansas Children's.
That's good. I want to go a little deeper. This is going to be a big, broad question for you. How do you so you've got this belief that healthcare needs to change. You've got this big mission. And then we're always in healthcare, we're always fighting the way we've always done it, right? Or what's working is working. Why should we change? So we're always fighting that in healthcare. And when you came here, Arkansas is ranked 45th in child health, and you're like, that's not good enough. You convinced the board it's not good enough. The board says we want to be status quo anymore. So how do you transfer this belief that things should be different, belief that we've got to keep the family member right in the center of healthcare, continuing to beat the drum of candor. It's not just a phrase that we use, but it's a belief that we use. And then what's the belief that had to change within your leadership team to move from 45th to maybe you tell us where we're at now in that? That's a big, broad question, I know, but I know you've got the answers there.
So it's funny, this phrase came up yesterday in our leadership development day that I think is a great imagery for how we approach our work at Arkansas Children. And it is managing tension and balance of one step in the present or one foot in the present and one foot in the future. And if we do not spend purposeful time focused on the future, it is really hard to get your team there. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what the future will be, but we should certainly be planning for opportunity. We should be very strategic about positioning ourselves to be open to partnerships and growth and new ways of doing things. And we have to be really exceptional about what we do every day today. And
Right.
I think that mindset of a foot in the present and a foot in the future helps us with that. I believe as the CEO, it is absolutely my responsibility to ensure that the board understands what is and what could be, and to help guide the board's thinking and educate them so that they can help shape our strategic direction. And to do that means I have to spend time learning, reading, thinking about what will be. And so I have a tremendous team. I have an extraordinary team, Mike. I would put my senior leadership team up against any leadership team in the country in any industry. They are wicked smart and lead with the lowest amount of ego I've ever experienced on a team. And that is a magic secret sauce. It's like lightning in a bottle to take our team forward. And so they can do the daily stuff, right? I don't need to be in every conversation. I am not making every decision about how the new lobby opened up or planning for the exact date that our new ORs will engage or the beds will be open at ACNW. That I've got teams that do that. My responsibility is to be really engaged in the industry, understand what's happening at the federal level and the state level from a policy standpoint, understand what's happening in our industry and with my colleagues across the country on research and pushing science forward and what that's going to take. And then to try to shape that into something that makes sense in the state of Arkansas for Arkansas children and also for our region. And maybe that sounds easy in those simple words I just threw out there. It's actually sometimes a lot of mental gymnastics and you leave with a headache. And I don't do it alone. Please don't even think that I am not the smartest person in the room to be able to do that. But it really is the role of the CEO to know your business well enough that you can help a board learn the business. We have passionate board members about Arkansas Children's, and almost none of them work in healthcare. Business people in their own right. They've run big business, they've run small businesses, they're great community volunteers. So we have to educate them about healthcare as a business. And I think we do that really. And then they can bring their expertise from their own industries in to help decide where we go. But it's a balance of where the financing is going to come from. What's the future of our reimbursement? What is public policy doing for child health, which isn't a lot these days?
Yeah.
And then how do you thread that needle and have an organization survive? I believe we do that pretty well here.
Yeah. Your results prove that you are. Keep doing what you're doing, obviously. I want to talk about you had the opportunity to receive a big gift, a $50 million donation, and started with a cold letter in the mail that you received, right? And most CEOs would hand that off to the foundation team, but I think you handled that personally and kind of went through that process. I'm sure you involved with your foundation team, a lot of people, but what was the thinking that made it possible for you to turn a cold letter in your mailbox into that historic $50 million gift? What was that like? What was your thinking and how did you land that? So to speak?
It is the largest gift in our history at Arkansas Children's. There are children's hospitals around the country who've received $100 million gifts and they're like 50 million, whatever. It's our largest and it's truly transformational for us. And I am not exaggerating. I actually keep that letter right, right by my
Yeah, I love
computer.
that.
I
Yeah,
mean, it
that's
is a
awesome.
real letter signed by him because I don't get a lot of real mail anymore, right? But I keep that because it was so different. Mr. Tom Golisano started Paychecks as a company with $3,000 in his own pocket. He has a tremendous personal story. I think his book was called The Italian Kid Did It. I recommend it. If you want an insight into a truly self-made businessman from Rochester, New York. He has a passion for pediatric healthcare. His net worth is pretty incredible these days. I don't know exactly what it is, 7, 8 billion dollars. And he's committed to changing the landscape of pediatric healthcare in our country. One person. His personal giving is now almost at $500 million to children's healthcare around the country. I was startled to get a letter. One, to get a real letter. Two, I read it and I was like, I don't know who Tom Golisano is. But a Google away.
Yep.
And I started to realize I have heard the name before as I sat there a minute and realized that the Children's Hospital in Rochester, New York was called Golisano Children's Hospital. So it's a member of CHA, the Children's Hospital Association. And it just took a little bit to say, this guy's real. And if you can do a little bit of research and figure out he's also given a fair amount of money away to all sorts of things. He's a tremendous philanthropist. But it was pretty funny because it came at a week when my chief development officer was actually on vacation. And when he came back that next week, I was like, hey, listen, we got this letter and I think we need to pursue it. There's a person we should call, an email, either phone and email. And he's like, Marcy, this is like the Nigerian prince story, right? This is not that was exactly his kind of joke. He's like, there's no way anyone's just out of New York is calling Arkansas Children's to give us money. I was like, no, this is a real guy who's given away real money and seems to be legit. So I want our team to pursue this. And that was June of last year. And it stalled a bit. The foundation, I think, wasn't really convinced it was going to be something. It was a little slower than we might have wanted. But in the end, we got that flywheel going by late summer and into October. And we're able to meet with the members of the Golisano Foundation, who kind of does all the pre-work on behalf of Mr. Golisano. Invited her here for a site visit. She spent 2 days with us. And what I had found, so he has written 2 books. I read both of the books cover to cover, did my homework on who Mr. Golisano really was, and found great alignment between his personal values and the values he set in Paychecks with the core values of Arkansas children. And so when we were able to meet with his foundation team, we showed that alignment. We were able to be able, in our own words and not in a performance type way, show her how we live out our values and the work we do on behalf of the kids in our region that align with how Mr. Golisano led his business and envisions life in a pediatric health system. So we got invited to meet with him in person. And I went to his home in Naples, Florida, and spent an hour with him. Brought some of my team members and one of my board members to tell the story of Arkansas Children's and the journey we'd been on in the 12 years I'd been CEO at the time. Now it's 13. And really signaled to him where we intend to go to take care of kids across Arkansas and the heartland. And 58 minutes into that meeting, he looked up and he said, I think I'll give you $50 million. And I was
How did you hold
upset.
it together right there?
And this is amazing. Everyone's really excited. And he allowed that celebratory moment for about, I don't know, 45 seconds. And he's like, okay, we're done here. And he puts his hands on his dining room table and he stands up and he's like, thank you for coming. Like,
Wow.
oh, I guess it's done. But we've really engaged deeply now with some other members of the Golisano, what's called now the Golisano Children's Alliance. He's gifted money to 15 children's hospitals. He hopes to give money to 40 children's hospitals across our country. And we're helping shape that conversation around a country of particularly those hospitals that serve deep rural areas and what you can do to help kids not have to travel far for care. He has a personal experience with a great granddaughter who had to relocate for healthcare. And that was really his why was kids shouldn't have to travel for healthcare. And so I think we can help solve that for him. It was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, congratulations on that. And that's such a big deal for not only you as a leader, the hospital, but the state of Arkansas, right? Me being here in Arkansas, that means a lot. And it's about you kind of putting your vision out there 13 years ago when you came here and said, this is what we're going to do. And I'm a believer that, when our vision mission aligns with our action, great things are attracted to us, right? I think the good Lord sends the right opportunity, right people our way. And that's a great example of that. So congratulations on that. I want to land the plane here because I know you've got real important things to do today, but we're facing critical headwinds in healthcare in America right now. And so as the chair of the Children's Hospital Association, you're really about designing a legacy that impacts millions of children across the country, not only here in the state of Arkansas. When you look at the next generation of pediatric leadership executives, what's the single biggest leadership behavior you think they need to unlearn if we want to survive in the next decade? Not learn, but unlearn.
That's an interesting question. I think because reshaping our healthcare industry, redefining financing of healthcare, regulatory environment, all of that work is so difficult to imagine how to do that. It is hard work. We have a deeply embedded system that the financing of healthcare really started in the 1960s with the evolution of Medicaid and Medicare. And that's really fundamentally set the stage for how healthcare is financed in our country. And in order to change health, we also need to change the financing of healthcare because we need to fund the right things that will allow for health, not just funding sickness and illness. I think people get too overwhelmed with how hard that will be. And so the skill set executives use today in advocating for public policy or financing or whatever it might be is preservation. I want to preserve what we have. I want to keep what we have. If you even look back at all of last summer, spring of 25 and last summer that led to HR1, the one big beautiful bill, it was about protect Medicaid. It was about don't let children get hurt in the fight. It was preservation. And I actually believe if we're going to be better at taking care of children in our country and elevating the health of children in our country, we have to lose the conversation of preservation. And we have to be willing to do incredibly tough work and propose something fundamentally different.
Love that.
And it's not about preservation. It's about thinking differently and agility that will lead us to something very new. And that's really hard in healthcare. It's really hard in pediatric healthcare. We talk about innovation all the time, and we are an innovative industry. There's no doubt, but we're innovative in mostly incremental ways because
Mm.
the margin of error in pediatric healthcare is very small. And so, who wants their child to be innovated on? Right? That sounds really scary. You might hurt my kid. But I believe we're going to have to be incredibly innovative, which means leaving behind all that we know and we learned in grad school and we learned through experience and have to be willing to trust that as a broad team of really smart Americans, we can figure out a better way to fund healthcare for kids and establish a foundation of society that allows for the health of children.
Yeah, that's so good. I think it kind of takes me back to one of the challenges you said you're facing is how do we hire differently? And I think our future is bright in that regard based on what you just said. Cause I think the generation behind you and I are Gen Xers, they think differently, right? They grew up with technology and innovation. That doesn't mean I think maybe some of our parenting has held them back because we want to keep them in a safe box, right? But I love what you just shared. Yeah, it's getting outside that box, getting being innovative outside the box, not in the box that we're in.
And
And
I'll
I
tie,
appreciate
if you'll let me, I'll tie it back to one of the stories I told at the very beginning, the sickle cell stuff. So the healthcare industry today is designed to care for a person who has sickle cell anemia and to pay for all of their illnesses and injuries that result in a lifetime of having sickle cell. Hospitalization after hospitalization, moderate pharmaceutical intervention and therapeutics. But these are people who experience a lifetime of illness in really expensive stays in the hospital. I couldn't tell you on the lifetime of the sickle cell how much is really spent, but it's got to be in the millions. The gene therapy that will almost essentially cure a person with sickle cell will cost about 3 million or more in 1 year. It is a huge hurdle to get any insurance payer, whether it's commercial or government, to want to pay that up front. But we have to fundamentally shift our thinking that we want to pay to cure, not pay to care. $1 million up right now in a 12-year-old and avoid a lifetime of illness.
yeah.
The system wins if we can do that. We're
And
just
improves
gonna
their quality of life.
but we will. We're
Yeah,
gonna
that's
we're
so
gonna
good.
change.
I'm excited. You've got me. I'm going to be watching that story now that you've shared that. And I appreciate you sharing that with the lead up listeners. Marcy, this has been a fantastic conversation. And I just love what you're doing. Love what you've built. Obviously, I've known Children's Hospital my entire life, but to watch what you've built in the last 13 years and what you're continuing to build and the vision for the organization, Children's Healthcare in Arkansas, is quite inspirational. So thanks for sharing that with us today on the Lead Up podcast. And thanks for sharing that with the world as well.
I really appreciate the invitation. I've enjoyed the conversation, and our building is not done. We really feel like we've got an obligation, not just to Arkansas, but really to the kids of the heartland. So stay tuned over the coming months of where you might see continued expansion and our ability to take care of kids closer to where they live and not just have to come into Little Rock for that care. So stay tuned.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.